Hello, everybody. My name is Erin, and I'm the creator here at Flow State Wellness. I am a registered nurse, holistic nurse coach, yoga teacher, and somebody who has spent years studying human behavior, nervous system regulation, and what creates a lasting transformation. Throughout my career, I've worked in labor and delivery, pediatric behavioral health, and corporate wellness. But the common thread has always been helping people better understand themselves so that they can create healthier, more intentional lives. I created Flow State Wellness because I've become deeply fascinated by the invisible forces that shape our lives. The beliefs we inherited, the survival strategies we developed, and the stories we unknowingly carry often have far more influence over our choices than knowledge ever will. When we understand these patterns, we gain the freedom to choose something different. That is exactly what this workshop is about. Before we begin, I want to set the stage for what you are about to experience and what this isn't. This isn't some therapy session. I'm not that. This is an educational workshop designed to help you understand the patterns that shape the way you think, work, and you lead. You've probably heard the term inner child before, so we're not going to spend time defining it. Instead, we're going to get specific about how those younger parts of us continue to influence our lives today. How they show up when you're undercharging, overworking, hiding your best work, endlessly rewriting the same email, procrastinating on the next step, or lying awake on Sunday night dreading Monday. The central idea of this training is simple. Every child develops brilliant strategies to survive the environment that they are raised in. Those strategies become patterns. Over time, those patterns harden into personality. Personality becomes identity, and before we even realize it, that identity is quietly running the operating system behind our business, our relationships, and many of the decisions we make every single day. Throughout this workshop, we'll identify those unconscious patterns, understand why they developed, and explore more practical ways to begin to change them. Because once you can recognize the code that's been running in the background, you have the ability to write something brand new. Here's the reframe that I want you to leave with. What you call my personality is often just the last strategy that worked. A 5-year-old who learned that being agreeable to keep the peace doesn't get the memo at 18 that says, okay, you can stop now. She just keeps being agreeable. Except now she is 34 and it's showing up as a commitment she should have walked away from 8 months ago. That's the whole shape of this workshop. Strategy becomes personality, personality hardens into identity, and identity quietly becomes the pattern running all of your decisions. What you charge, what you post, who you hire, and what you say yes to. Actually, let's just start there. How many of you have said yes to something where your inner child screamed, please don't make us do this? And your inner people pleasers replied, too late, I already sent the email. A survival strategy is brilliant and specific. A kid figures out if I'm perfect, nobody has a reason to leave, criticize, or abandon me. That is not a flaw. That is a smart kid solving an unsolvable problem with the only tools that she has. Do something enough times and your brain stops labeling it as a coping strategy. It becomes your personality. I'm just a people pleaser. I'm a perfectionist. Keep repeating it, and eventually it becomes your identity. That is just who I am. And once we call something who I am, we stop asking where it even came from or if it's still serving us. And then it becomes a business pattern. You know the woman, the program she's been the program she is almost ready to launch for 6 months. The Instagram post she's rewritten 12 times and still hasn't published. The prices she knows she needs to raise but can't quite bring herself to send. The website site she's tweaking for the 47th time instead of telling people she even exists. Not because she's not isn't capable. In fact, she is one of the most talented people in the room, but because somewhere along the way she learned that being seen before wasn't she wasn't perfect, wasn't safe. Think of it like old software. It was written to run on a much smaller, much more dangerous system, a child's world where you had no money, no car, no legal rights, and total dependence on people who may or may not have been safe. That software still boots up every time you open your email to send an invoice. It was brilliant code for that system. It's just running on hardware that outgrew it years ago. This isn't dysfunction. This is a nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do. Your business is a relationship with money, with being seen, with yourself. Every strategy course teaches funnels, offers, and pricing tiers. almost none of them teaches you that your relationship with money was formed before you could even read, and that your relationship with visibility was formed the first time being noticed got you praised or had gotten you hurt. Think about the woman who has built a successful business and still feels knots in her stomach every time she raises her rates, every time she invests in herself, every time someone says yes to working with her. Success changed her circumstances. It didn't automatically change the beliefs she learned about money, value, and deservingness. This is exactly the lens your workbook uses today. Turn to the page that says Entrepreneur as the Reparent. Business isn't just strategy, it is relationship. Everything we do for the next 20 minutes or so will build on these pages. Two things to make concrete here. First, the emotional brain is running the show years before the thinking brain ever shows up to help. Second, and this is the one that matters for today, a child literally cannot distinguish something bad happened from I'm bad. There is no cognitive architecture yet for the more accurate, more merciful interpretation. So when something painful happens to a small child, the conclusion isn't that was unfair. The conclusion is I did something wrong or I am wrong. That wiring doesn't get retired as we grow up. It gets promoted. It is the same circuitry firing when a client ghosts you after a great session, and within 4 seconds, you've gone from they got busy to I'm not good enough to keep clients. That leap isn't a character flaw. It is a 5-year-old's logic firing through an adult's nervous system. Think of it like a smoke detector that was calibrated in a house that was actually on fire. It saved your life then. It wasn't told that the fire is out. The window of tolerance is the zone where you can think, feel, and respond, where you have access to your full range, including your smartest, most creative self. Above the window is hyperarousal, fight or flight. Below it is hypoarousal, freeze or fawn. Hyperarousal is the 11 p.m. rage email to a 1-star review that you should have just slept on. It is the panic pivot where one quiet week suddenly convinces you your entire business needs a complete overhaul. Hypoarousal is you spending 45 minutes researching the perfect planner instead of just doing the thing anyway. That isn't laziness, and neither is overreacting. Both are nervous systems that have left the window. Here's the part that matters most. Your nervous system can't always tell the difference between this client is upset today and someone I depended on was upset 25 years ago. It doesn't have a calendar. It just knows this feels just like that, and it reacts with the same intensity. Once we know where Once we know where we are reacting from, we can start asking who is reacting. Take out your workbook and find the page titled, Who has been leading my business? Keep that open in front of you. I'm going to walk through each of these. Your only job is to notice without judgment which one feels most familiar this season. Not which one you wish were true, not which one is actually driving, right now. And I want to say this clearly. These are not diagnoses. Nobody in this room is a pleaser the way that you are a Capricorn. These are parts, protective strategies that show up, more or less depending on stress, sleep, revenue, and how safe the room feels. Most of us have all 6. We're just looking for which one has been having the steering wheel most often lately. There's a therapist named Richard Schwartz who spent decades studying exactly this, and his core idea is simple. The mind is naturally multiple. It is not a flaw to have parts. It would be really strange not to. This is the part that built the business in the first place. She is resourceful, she's capable, and she's probably never once been rescued. Somewhere needing something from another person led to disappointment, often enough that a child concluded it was safer to become fully self-sufficient. Maybe caregivers were unavailable, inconsistent, or simply overwhelmed. The child had adapted brilliantly. She learned to meet her needs early, and that competence likely became her superpower. It's very possibly the exact trait that let her start the business in the first place. You'll recognize her here. She hires a virtual assistant and quietly redoes everything that they touch. She turns down a genuinely good collaboration because sharing credit or sharing control feels unsafe in a way she can't quite name. She hits a revenue ceiling that has nothing to do with the market demand and everything to do with the fact that one person's hours are finite. In attachment terms, this often traces back to an avoidant pattern. Not, I don't need people, but I learned needing people didn't reliably work, so I stopped feeling the need consciously. The need didn't disappear, it just went underground. So here's a question worth sitting with. Not solving, but just sitting with. Where in your business right now are you the only person who can do a task that isn't actually of the highest use of you? To everyone around her, the controller often looks like the most competent person in business. She has the spreadsheet, the plan, the contingency for the contingency. Somewhere, this child lived through genuine unpredictability. A household with conflict, instability, financial stress, or a caregiver whose mood she couldn't quite forecast. Planning, tracking, controlling every variable became her way of creating safety in an environment that offered none. That's not anxiety for anxiety's sake. That is a nervous system that learned correctly that vigilance kept her safer than trusted. You'll know her by this: the launch that's been pushed 4 times because one more thing needs verifying first. The role that stays unfulfilled because no candidate ever feels quite certain enough. A beautifully organized plan mistaken for actual forward motion because the plan feels safe in a way that action, with its inherent uncertainty, never will. This connects back to the window of tolerance we talked about earlier. Uncertainty itself can register in the nervous system as a threat, activating the same alarm system as actual danger. She isn't being difficult. Her body is registering the unknown in a way it once registered real unpredictability. Control was never really about the plan, it was about safety. The invitation isn't to become reckless. It is to practice tolerating a little uncertainty on purpose in small, low stake doses so the nervous system slowly learns the world won't end. I want to clarify something because it's the single most important distinction in the whole talk. The grounded adult is not a seventh part to add to the list. She is not a permanent upgrade you either have or don't. She is what's actually already there underneath all of the other 6 parts. The moment they trust her enough to stand down. There's a therapist, Richard Schwartz, whose core discovery, back now by clinical or decades of clinical use, is that underneath every protective part, every wound, every strategy, there is an undamaged core self. Calm, curious, compassionate, clear, courageous, creative, connected, all those C words. It was never destroyed. It was just buried under people doing their jobs. She isn't the version of you that never feels fear before a launch. She is the version who can feel the fear and launch anyway, because she trusts herself to handle whatever happens on the other side. She is not fearless, she is just no longer being driven by fear. So the real question is the real question isn't how do I get rid of my pleaser or fire my perfectionist? It's who is actually leading right now. And how do I help that part step back so that the grounded adult can drive? That's exactly what reparenting means, and that's where we're headed next. I want to borrow 3 terms, just enough language to make the next few slides click. Managers are parts working proactively all day to prevent pain. They're the ones over-preparing, over-checking, over-controlling, trying to make sure nothing bad happens in the first place. Firefighters are reactive. They show up after something painful has already broken through, and their job is to make the pain stop right now by any means necessary. Numbing out, an impulsive decision, a sudden urge to blow up a project or a relationship rather than sit with the discomfort. And underneath both are the exiles, the young, wounded parts holding the original belief everybody else has been working so hard to protect. Usually something simple and devastating: I'm not enough, I'm too much, I'm unlovable unless I perform. Here's how it plays out. A client sends a short, blunt email. A manager responds by immediately rereading and editing the last 3 deliverables for flaws. If that doesn't relieve the anxiety fast enough, a firefighter takes over, maybe an impulsive "per my last email" reply, maybe a sudden urge to fire the client altogether, maybe just numbing out on your phone for about an hour. And underneath both reactions, doing absolutely nothing wrong, is the exile, holding a much older belief. I did something wrong, and I'm about to be abandoned. None of these parts are the enemy, including the firefighter, even when his behavior causes real damage. Every part is trying to help, using the only strategy that it knows. The goal was never to fight them, it's for the grounded adult to lead them. I want to reframe the inner critic before we go any further. It's not a punishment, it's a bodyguard with bad aim. Somewhere along the way, this part learned that criticism was going to happen no matter what. From a parent, a teacher, a culture that told girls to be quieter, smaller, and more agreeable. So it made a deal. If I get there first, if I'm harder on myself than anyone else could be, maybe I can control the timing and the severity of the pain. Maybe I could even prevent it. That's not self hatred for its own sake. That's a very old protective strategy, still clocking in for a shift every single day. You know her voice, the one who says, "Who do you think you are?" right before you hit send on a price increase. The one who says, "They're just being nice," after a glowing testimonial. The one who whispers, "Don't get excited yet," the moment a launch goes well, just in case celebrating turns out to be premature. And I want to be precise about something because it's easy to conflate. Self compassion is not the same as lowering your standards. A researcher named Kristen Neff has spent years studying this, and she found that self compassion correlates more resilience and motivation, not less, because you're no longer spending half of your energy managing the fallout of self attack. The inner critic thinks it's protecting your standards. It's actually taxing your capacity to fully meet them. This isn't about blaming parents, and it's not a permanent label. Attachment style is best understood as a template, a set of expectations about whether people can be trusted to show up, built in the first few years of life through thousands of small, repeated interactions. Secure attachment in business looks like asking for a rate increase without over explaining and trusting that a client's short email doesn't mean the relationship is over. Anxious attachment shows up as compulsively checking whether a client is happy, needing reassurance after every project, and reading neutral as negative. Avoidant attachment shows up as the lone wolf we already met, keeping people, including your own team, at arm's length, because closeness once felt unsafe and unreliable. And disorganized attachment is the most confusing one to live inside, genuinely wanting connection with a mentor, a client, a partner, and then unconsciously sabotaging it the moment it starts to feel real. Here's the hopeful part. Researchers going back to Mary Ainsworth's original work and continuing through decades of study since have found something called learned secure attachment. People genuinely rewrite their template, usually through consistent corrective relationships, and through exactly the kind of reflective work happening in this room tonight. Quickly, the neuroscience. The amygdala, the brain's threat detector, stores emotional memory without a timestamp. It can't tell you this happened in 2004. It can only say, "This feels like something dangerous," and fire the alarm accordingly. That's what's meant by the amygdala hijack. A present day, often minor event gets matched against an old emotional file, and your body responds to the intensity of the old file, not the size of the thing that's actually in front of you. Take the first one on the list. A client goes quiet after you send a proposal. Rationally, you know people get busy, but if silence historically used to precede something bad and mood shifting, a conversation you weren't prepared for, your body doesn't wait for the rational explanation. It reacts to the shape of the pattern, the resilience itself, the silence itself before your thinking brain even gets a vote. The goal isn't to stop having triggers. That's not realistic, and it's not necessary. The goal is to get faster about recognizing this reaction is bigger than this moment, which itself is the first move back inside the window of tolerance. Just naming it, even just thinking, "I think I'm time traveling right now," can be enough to bring the thinking brain back online. So if triggers are old alarms firing in a body that never got all clear signals, who's supposed to give that signal? That's reparenting, and that is what is next. Reparenting is not pretending to be your own mother. It's not rewriting your childhood, and it's not about blaming the parents who raised you. It means becoming now, as an adult, the steady and attuned presence your younger self needed, and offering her that presence retroactively so she can finally stand down. It has 4 parts. 1. Validation. Sounds like acknowledging a feeling is real before trying to fix or minimize it. Of course that stung. Someone left a harsh comment on something you poured yourself into. 2. Boundaries. Sound like a clear, kind line. This is my rate, this is my scope, and this is what I'm available for. Held without a 3-paragraph justification attached. 3 is comfort. It sounds like the internal voice that says, "I got you. during a hard launch week instead of the inner critic piling on. And 4, consistency. It is maybe the most overlooked one. It means showing up for yourself the same way on a boring Tuesday as you do after a big win, because that is actually what makes a nervous system finally believe that it is safe. There is a psychologist, Dr. Becky Kennedy, who talks about sturdy leadership, being both warm and firm at once. That is exactly the balancing point here. Discipline without compassion raises a child or runs a business on shame. Compassion without boundaries raises chaos. You need both, held at the same time, not alternating between them. This is what we're about to practice, not as a concept, but as an actual felt experience. We've spent the last 20 minutes, or 30 minutes, I guess it is, understanding this intellectually. Now I want to give your body a minute to actually feel it, safely, and only as far as it feels good to do today. If at any point you'd rather just sit with your eyes open and breathe, that's completely fine too. There is no wrong way to do this. So go ahead and get real comfortable in your seat. Let your eyes close if that feels okay, or soften your gaze downward. Take 3 slow breaths. In your workbook, you've already named a part. Maybe the pleaser, maybe the perfectionist, maybe another one entirely. I want you to picture her, not as the concept, as an actual moment. A specific age, a specific room, maybe. What is she wearing? And what's around her? Your only job right now is to witness her, not to fix her, not to rescue her, and not to change what happens. Just see her exactly as she is, exactly where she is. Now gently imagine yourself exactly as you are today in your actual adult body, with everything you've built and survived. Walking into that scene and sitting down beside her. Not to change anything, but to just be there. Ask her and really wait for whatever answer arrives, even if it surprises you. What do you need right now? What were you starting to believe about yourself in this moment? What do you wish somebody had told you? And now, let your adult self make her one promise. Not a grand, sweeping promise, a specific and honest one. Something that you can actually keep. Let that promise form in your mind. Now let's come all the way back together. Notice your feet on the floor. Notice the chair holding you up. And take one slow breath in. And let it out slower than it came in. Open your eyes if they were closed. And look around the room. Notice the reality all around you, your environment, the people around you. You are here. You are safe. And you're an adult now with resources and choices and a nervous system that is allowed to learn that the danger has passed. Now go ahead and turn back to the very first page of your workbook. Before we started tonight, I asked you to finish one sentence. The woman I am becoming. Take a moment and read what you wrote. And now, without erasing it, finish that sentence again. Because I'm willing to bet it means something different now than it did before. Here's what I hope you leave with today. The woman you're becoming isn't somebody you have to create from scratch. She's not waiting for another certification, another book, another perfect morning routine, or another year of confidence before she finally shows up. She's already here. She simply emerges every time you choose awareness over autopilot. Every time you choose a boundary over people-pleasing, every time you choose courage over perfection, every time you let your grounded adult make the decision instead of your frightened child. Nothing we talked about tonight was about fixing what's broken. Those parts of you, the pleaser, the perfectionist, the prover, the controller, the lonely wolf, they weren't mistakes. They were brilliant adaptations. They helped you survive. Many of them probably helped you build the business you have today. But they don't have to be the ones leading it anymore. Your younger parts don't need to disappear. They just need someone safe to follow. And after today, that somebody is you. Thank you so much.